AskReddit by Virtual Pixie. What is a form of trauma people don't acknowledge? Childhood emotional neglect. I want to reply and comment about this, but when I start typing I get sad and freeze up. 63 years old and still don't feel like I really matter to anyone. Being a caregiver for dying family member. Most people focus their attention on the sick and dying. Most doesn't realize that the caregiver is physically and mentally exhausted. Many result in serious depression, which take years to recover even with help from doctor medication. Even being a caregiver to special needs intellectually disabled folk, they can be the nicest people or the most vile you could ever work with. I mean, literally abusive with no regard to others' safety, and if you're their staff, then you were stuck with that abuse. When your parents made you never feel like you were good enough. Now I'm in my mid-20s, I finally understand why I've always felt like a people pleaser and wanted everyone to like me. Anything can be someone's trauma. I tell my kids whenever they see someone acting differently, you don't know everyone's story. Don't be too quick to judge. I'm in the social work field. I work with recently released prisoners, homeless people, mentally challenged, and people just in a bad place daily. As Roy Kent said, none of us know what's going on each other's lives. Workplace trauma. Lots of people in dangerous jobs hardly walk away from accidents, and especially for blue-collar folks it's all part of the experience. My uncle has severe PTSD from watching his friend die on the job. Even just a toxic workplace or a high-stress job can really fuck you up though. It doesn't even have to be life or death for it to have an impact. I had a string of terrible managers in my 20s that legitimately gave me major trust issues. Having to go to work every day feeling like it could be your last is excruciating. My husband still has trauma from being laid off 7 years ago. People don't talk about it because it's so common, but it's legitimately health affecting. Religious trauma. Spending your life walking on eggshells, worrying about every little thing possibly being a sin, can really mess up your mind. The internalized shame runs so deep. Generational trauma gets passed on in fucked up ways. BoJack Horseman, Generational Trauma, the show. Complex PTSD. Not well, no, you often don't realize you have it. But when you get an understanding of it, you see it in a surprisingly, and sadly, large number of people. I am one of those people. Always knew I had copious traumas, never knew it had its own category, loved all my other CPTSD havers. Medical trauma, from going through a serious illness, injury, or medical event. Yeah, I'm still working through this myself. Never would have thought about it until it happened to me 4 months ago. Neglect. Ironically, research has shown we both neglect research and that it has as much damage as active abuse. The trauma from being a social outcasts. Instead of thinking someone is awkward, maybe think that they are the ones who were the joke of their high school and wouldn't get the time of day in college. I feel this. The schools I went to were infested with gangs and getting jump mobbed was a normal Tuesday for me, not to mention I was the unwanted leftover kid at home. 20 plus years later I still worry about randomly getting jumped in parking lots. I might get downvoted for this, but the trauma of being female in middle and high school, surrounded by hormonal boys. The constant sexualization and objectifying comments. Overhearing absolutely shocking and vile conversations about the girls around them, while they explore their sexualities in public and without having the brain development to realize how hurtful they are being. Obviously it's not all boys, but I, and probably many other women, am absolutely traumatized by my experiences with teen boys and how, when they get together in groups, something terrifying happens and it's like a game for them to harass the girls, and female teachers, around them in the most depraved ways. You know, I never thought I would say this, but this may be the one upside to gender segregated schools. I grew up in Iran. Again, never thought I would say it. Mostly the kind that isn't happening literally right in front of their faces. People taking advantage of people who aren't the brightest, or just it's traumatic to be that person. I guess the realization itself that things aren't coincidental is traumatic, not a life to live, tbh. Trauma from verbal abuse or total emotional detachment while growing up. It's so damaging to a kid's growth and follows them into adulthood. Generally referred to as CPTSD but not recognized as so medically. I have this, but they just call it PTSD on my charts. I also have CPTSD. Feel like an outsider everywhere, even in my own body. So many emotions and feelings, memories, it's also intense. Love to you. Childbirth. That shit is brutal. Medical trauma can be horrible, but it doesn't really occur to people that it's an actual thing. You go into hospital for a minor procedure and end up on life support because someone fucked up. Trauma. You're in a horrific accident and doctors have to perform life-saving medical interventions whilst you're still awake because there's no time for a general anesthetic. Trauma. You're forcibly restrained because of your mental state. Trauma with a side of nobody will listen to you because you're crazy. I got sexually assaulted in a hospital by a female doctor. How I wished I never went to that hospital. Modern life. I'm from a country where violence, murder, kidnapping, shootings are more or less common, but I'm sure people from lots of other countries will relate. I have lived my whole life with fear of something happening to myself or loved ones. There was a point in my life where every time I went out I thought about how I might not make it back home. The cost of life does nothing but increase. Jobs are difficult to find, pay very little and treat you like shit. We grew up seeing how difficult the adults had it and there was no promise of things getting better. There is still very little chance things will improve. It's hot all year. Big soda companies are stealing and contaminating our water. There are new wars, conflicts and humanitarian crises every week. And we are still expected to get up every morning, work and function as if our lives weren't in constant danger and stress. Growing up and living in a world like this can't be good for anyone. I'm no psychologist and my definition of trauma might be inaccurate, but I don't think someone can live like we do and be sane. I'd say parents' defensive style being emotional blackmail, even if they don't necessarily mean it. Guess I'm just an awful mother. You always have to justify yourself, walk on eggshells or compromise yourself pleasing someone else. Financial abuse. Being in a relationship with someone who won't control their spending can be stressful and exhausting. Severe social anxiety. I have no clue how to word this, but parents who aren't involved with their children emotionally. I love my parents to death, but my relationship with them has no aspect of emotion at all. We don't hug day to day. Everyone hangs out in separate rooms. The dinner table is quiet. My parents don't even ask me how my day was at school. It low-key just feels like I have roommates who pay for my rent and food. I honestly couldn't tell you a lot about my parents, and they wouldn't be able to tell you a lot about me. I think this is overlooked cause a lot of people have overprotective, overbearing parents who are super involved in their lives and are around them 24/7. You don't realize until you're in a situation like I am that it's super depressing. You don't feel loved or wanted. Everything is super draining. It's weird when they are authoritative because it never seems like they care. I don't know, it just sucks. Definitely messed me up. You aren't alone. This is similar to the relationship I have with my mom. Being in poverty. I have PTSD from being poor, and even if I came across money I don't think I'll ever be able to shake it. Sports trauma. Mental and physical. I'm an ex-figure skater and experienced a lot of things at the hands of both my peers and my coaches. Skating made my anxiety so much worse to the point of suicidal ideation at 13 and has ruined my body to the point I'm dealing with chronic pain at 17. The behind the scenes of figure skating isn't as glamorous as the public likes to think it is. Prostitution trauma.